If not, I'll have to figure it out in my own time. Let's not worry about it. So I'm Lauren, and this is my HR admin assistant, Lynn. I'm sure you've probably spoken to her on WeChat, whether you knew it or not. She uses the Xenon Careers WeChat account. So first of all, just go through the contents quickly. The first thing I'm going to cover, which you might have already done, but obviously if you're new or you've not managed to get around to the training yet, we're just going to do a quick right to work overview, essentially because that's really, really important for us to do. As an employer of a lot of international students, we have to make sure that we're compliant and that we follow the correct procedures. Second is proof of study and term dates, just as I know there can be a little bit of confusion as to what constitutes proof of study, and I'll also explain why we have to get both of those together. And I'll go over some contract types, different types of contracts used for different types of employees, some common issues that people encounter when obtaining the documents, and then there'll be time at the end for a Q&A, so anything you don't understand, anything you want me to go over again, anything we might have not covered. I know sometimes we get some one-off occasions that might not fall into any of these categories. First of all, right to work overview, the 3 steps that must be taken when anyone is joining the company or before they can start working. We must obtain the original copies of the acceptable documents. Now, when I say obtain, it means you need to physically see the documents. You can't accept a photograph because you cannot verify if that person is who they say they are, if that document is genuine. We must see the originals, check it, check that that person is who they say they are, they're not, someone else, it's not someone else in the photo, and then you must make a copy of it and record the date that the check was made. So here's some examples of things that are not acceptable. So the stamp should not be covering any or all of the document. It must be legible. You can't, well, you shouldn't, this one here, the top right-hand corner, you should make sure that you're copying onto a clear piece of paper, not over the top of any other documents. It has happened before and we have to reject them and ask that you take a clean copy. The bottom left used to be the old standard that was acceptable, but UK Visas and Immigration, or UKVI, like to change their requirements, like to make them more strict, so that is not acceptable anymore. And the bottom right, as I mentioned, you cannot accept a photo of the person holding it because you need to make the copy yourself. Okay, so the correct way to do it is just to take, just put it on the scanner, make sure it's a clear copy, and then use our right to work check stamps that we do have in the office. If you're not sure where they are kept, or you want to borrow HR's one, or just make sure you ask someone because they are available. So you must put the start date, your legal name, and then your signature to verify that you have done that right to work check. It makes sure that we're legally compliant. Some of the penalties for not doing this, if someone is caught to be working illegally and we've not made reasonable attempts to prove that they had the right to work, potentially £20,000 fine or a jail sentence. And potentially it could affect our Tier 2 sponsorship license, so affecting the jobs and the lives of quite a lot of people. So it's quite important, if not the most important thing to make sure that we're doing, especially when we're hiring students. So just a quick summary of some of the main points there. So it must be conducted on or before the contract start date. It can be the same date, it can be earlier, it can't be afterwards. If they're Tier 4 student visa holder, we must have the passport, the BRP on both sides, and proof of the study and term dates. Due to the fact that there is a working hours restriction for Tier 4, which is 20 hours per week maximum during term time, then the reason that we have to have the proof of study and proof of term dates is Tier 4 visas are conditional on being a university student. So if we've seen proof that they are a student, that's fine. And in terms of the 20 hours per week during term times, we need to know when the term times are. That's why we need both of those documents. Some of the situations that could happen, it's never happened, and fingers crossed it doesn't, is if someone is a Tier 4 student visa holder and then decides to drop out of their university or not attend at all, and we never obtained proof that they were a university student, then we might be liable as we've not made reasonable attempts. Whereas if they dropped out after we'd got the proof that they were a university student, then the ownership would go on the student, essentially, because we would have to go off the last information that we've been provided. So that covers the right to work section. As I said, there is the full right to work training on the OA. If you've not attended that already, I think it's part of your probation training. It's mandatory to attend that. So some of the different contract types. We've got office-based part-time staff versus MO or SA for the overseas team. So when we say MO, it covers SA as well, but the majority of the staff call them marketing officers, just to be clear. So the main differences are that office-based workers require additional documents and requirements. Essentially, they are more closely controlled by HR. So we will send the job offers, and it's conditional on obtaining one reference. So as you know, full-time people have to have 2 references, part-time need at least 1, because they're working in the office, they've got access to a lot of data and sensitive information. So we want at least 1 reference before we can confirm the start date. So that is controlled by HR, as is the contract. So HR will always issue the contract for any part-time office-based staff. They should sign the handbook. MO shouldn't be signing the handbook. There's a lot of information in that they don't need to know, a lot of things that won't be applicable to them, dress code, etc. They're not in the office, they don't need to sign it. Their counterpart is the confidentiality agreement, so that's their version of that. It's a lot shorter, and it just says that they won't give any of our information away. Self-employed. So these are not office-based staff. They have the right to work in the UK on a permanent basis. So, for example, they could be a British citizen, an EU citizen, an EEA citizen. They could have indefinite leave to remain, spouse visas, or permanent residence. So when we are hiring proofreaders and translators, and you're not sure whether they can be self-employed or not, you can always check with HR. But if they are one of those under the visa status or passport holders, then they can be self-employed. They need a lot less documents as well, because they're not on our payroll. They're responsible for their own tax. They're working as freelancers, essentially. So the only paperwork that we need is the contract, proof of ID, and confidentiality agreement. Now, just go back to the proof of ID is not the same as a right to work check. If someone is self-employed, and they are, British or EU or under one of those categories, we don't need to do the right to work check, because they're saying, I do have the right to work and I am declaring myself to the tax office as self-employed. So the only reason that we take a copy of their ID is to just verify that they are who they say they are, as opposed to they have the right to work in the UK, if that makes sense. Okay? So we're going to move on to some common issues that we get with the documents. So the MO must fill in the Google form for their OA accounts to be created. So once they've filled in that Google form, we in HR will create them an account and email them the login details with strict instructions to fill in their personal information. So getting them paid relies on them giving us their bank details. It sounds quite obvious, but if you don't give us your bank details, we can't pay you. So a lot of the times after payday, we'll get queries, why has so-and-so not been paid? If they don't give us their bank details, it is physically and literally impossible for us to pay someone. We don't know how, and we don't have the means to do it. So you must make them aware that that's on them, essentially. They need to check their emails. Sometimes we even send them chasing emails. If it goes into their spam folder, they need to check. And each month as well, there are cut-off dates for HR and finance. If documents are incomplete by the HR date, essentially, we can't pay them on the 6th, and they need to wait till the next month. Again, we get questions, why has someone not been paid? If you know that something was missing and you didn't get it to us till the day before payday, Finance have cut-off dates, which mean that the payroll is finalised before your pay date. So everything is sort of reconciled and scheduled to be paid. So after those dates, we cannot make any changes. And it's not that we're being difficult, it's just that the payroll is finalised, cannot make any changes, and then they need to wait for the next month because we're only paid on the 6th of each month. The HR cut-offs are usually the last Friday of the month before the pay date. So the January the 6th cut-off, it's a little bit earlier this month because of Christmas and bank holidays, so apologies. But if you want anyone to be paid on the 6th of January, we must have everything completed by the 19th of December. And then the following month is a little bit later because we're back to sort of normal with bank holidays and festive breaks. So the February 6th cut-off is the 27th of January. We don't have the rest for the rest of the year yet because finance haven't given them us. Once we have them, they'll be available again on the OA. Just be mindful of those dates. If you're not giving us documents until, the first or even the day before payday, those people aren't going to get paid and there's nothing we can do about it, unfortunately. So again, some more common issues we're just going to cover is the right to work check. When the MO or any individual's visa is expired or is due to expire and they want to continue working, we've got a few options. If they give us a new visa before the expiry date or the application number for the new visa, we can do the right to work check and obviously renew their contract. That's fine. Number 2 is if the visa date is going to expire before the new visa is obtained, we have to take them off payroll and they'll do all the documents again once they've got a new visa. Number 3, if they're returning to their home country, they can be self-employed. So again, if say they've gone back to China, for instance, they can be classed as self-employed because they're not working in the country. So that's an option. But again, they need to be removed from the payroll and they're no longer paying tax in the UK. If your MO is not based in the same city as you and you need to do the right to work check, you can arrange, obviously with the permission of the employees based in that office, at any of the local UKC offices to have the right to work check conducted by one of your colleagues. Obviously, like I said, don't just schedule the student to turn up. Contact that office, ask them if it's okay and arrange a convenient time for that to happen. Completing the studies. Sometimes we have part-time staff or even MO that want to work more than 20 hours per week after they've completed their studies. In order to do so, we need a proof letter from the university on official letter-headed paper to state that they have completed their studies. So this is an example letter from Manchester University, so it's stamped, it's letter-headed, and it's signed. So then we can prove that we are adhering to the visa restrictions. As I mentioned, 20 hours per week during term time. If we can prove categorically they've finished all their studies, they're not in term time, then yes, they can work full-time. Providing the correct details on the OA. Again, with the bank details here, sometimes we're having MO put their card numbers instead of their bank account number onto the OA. We need to emphasise the importance of providing the correct details. Again, if they're expecting payment and they've not given us the right details, we can't pay them again. The information needs to be consistent, so sometimes we get it and it's inconsistent. So there's 3 different places where the address will show for the individual. So one is the HMRC checklist, one is the contract, and one is the OA. Now, if their address is different on every single document, we might have an issue because we don't know where they're living. The contract doesn't match what they're claiming, so we don't really know if it stands legally as an agreement, and if they're putting something different on the OA, their payslips are going to be addressed to that. So just double check that the address that they're giving you is correct and that it matches the contract. So at the very least, the HMRC checklist should match their address on their contract. If it doesn't, you need to ask them why and maybe reissue the contract or get them to change their HMRC checklist. I'm not sure why this happens. It could be that they're moving during or after terms, moving accommodations or something, but they should all be consistent. And that's pretty much it. I think the one thing that I forgot to mention was that on the contracts for MO and SA, the end date should not be after the visa expiry date. So it can be the same day, but it cannot be any later. If it is later, we will ask you to do the contract again. So that's pretty much everything from me. Does anyone have any questions or anything that we've not covered? No? Are you sure? Okay. If there's no questions, then that's it from me. If you've got anything that you wanted to ask in private, feel free to send me a WeChat or an email. Yeah, that's it. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.